Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Ide.
Here.
And Commissioner Mengelberg will be coming late, and then Mayor Holliday.
Here. So please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as I like to say, this is one of the very favorite things I do as mayor. We're going to be at 17019, the oath of office for Oregon City Police Officer Christopher Koenigke? What? Conkey. Well, I tried. Chief Band.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission, and everybody else who's here. I want to introduce Chris Conkey and his family. Chris is a 10-year veteran with Canby Police Department and is coming to the A-team. He lives.
He probably just wanted to have some work to do.
He lives in Oregon City. I am very proud of the fact that we really get a lot of good folks who want to come work here, and you can tell how good they are, how mad their chief is that they're leaving, and I take a lot of pride in that. Everybody at Canby said great things about him. Our staff have known him for a long time, and he's just a really good, solid guy. With him, his wife, Allison, and then Madison and Jordan. And Chris likes spend time with his family, camping, doing things in the outdoors. So, Chris, if you want to come forward, and the mayor's going to swear you in.
I have all my stuff here. Okay. Put that there. So if you please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, your name,
Chris Conkey,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon.
and I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the Department's rules and regulations
I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the Department's rules and regulations
while faithfully performing my duties as police officer for Oregon City.
while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's for you.
Thank you, sir.
Here, you can have the folder. And I'll just hand this to you. So if the family wants to come up and get a picture, come on up. If you want. All right. Thanks, guys. So just by chance, I will be seeing the chief of police in Canby next week for an event, so I will make sure to poke him about this.
Tread lightly.
Drive slow. Okay, so, well, you'd have to talk to Betty about that, because I'm not sure that Officer Conkey wasn't the one who gave her a speeding ticket in Canby a few months ago. So now we're up to citizen comments. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to present information relevant to the city, but not listed as an item on the agenda. If you want to speak to something that's on the agenda, please fill out a comment card and give it to Ms. Riggs. So are there any folks that have an issue? Okay. So we have Dakota Hufford. Whatever.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Dakota Hufford. I live in Oregon City. I've lived here for about 10 years almost. And I head up a group called Oregon City Naturalists. And as a group, we just aim to promote environmental awareness just around our city. And I just wanted to let anybody know who might be interested that we are doing our first volunteer event this Saturday, February 4th, at 12 noon to 2 p.m. Over at Mountain View Cemetery on Hilda. And we'll just be doing like debris clean of the grounds and stuff like that. And you can find us and any other information about it on Facebook and Instagram at Oregon City Naturalists.
All right.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
One, I appreciate the volunteer groups that we have all over the city that do all kinds of different stuff. The one thing I might suggest to you is to get on Oregon City Chit Chat on Facebook.
I am, yeah.
And the next door, the Oregon City Next Door pages, because I know that reaches like 8,000 or so folks.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay, cool.
you know,
Thank
if you want to put some more word out there, utilize those two things.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Is everybody okay with the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ide? Nancy,
Yes,
are you with?
I am.
Okay, there we go. All right. So move on to PC 17-013, request for continuance of AN 16-0004 / Zulu Charlie ZC 16-001, annexation and rezoning of 35.6 acres north of Holcomb Boulevard and west of Winston Drive. Ms. Turway,
Thank you very
you
much.
moved.
Thank you.
Okay.
The city received an annexation request for about 35 acres north of Holcomb Boulevard. This is currently before the Planning Commission. We received an annexation application, and then the applicant amended their application. And because of that, they requested more time at the Planning Commission. So they've had 2 Planning Commission meetings so far, but they have a third scheduled on February 13th. And so we do not have a staff report for this, even before the Planning Commission at all. We don't have any information regarding the application yet because it is still before the Planning Commission. So we are asking that you accept testimony, and we'll provide that testimony to the Planning Commission in order for them to make a recommendation to you.
Isn't that kind of getting the cart before the horse?
It is, and it would be within the commission's discretion to say no testimony until we get through the planning commission decision, or folks came out tonight and you could take the testimony. We'll make it available to the planning commission. It'll be in the record for your review when we get to you at this, but at this point we don't have a recommendation. We're not even that far.
So let me just ask for a show of hands in the audience. I know this was listed as a request for continuance, so are there, how many folks from the public are here to testify on this item tonight? Okay, thank you. So the question becomes, given what the attorney said,
Looks like we have about 5 signed up to speak. That's about 3 minutes each, right?
well, I saw more than 5 hands out there.
I think there's only 5 that
No,
signed up.
you got to pull all the way down there,
Oh.
sir. See the.
Okay.
It seems to me that this testimony should first start at the Planning Commission. Let the Planning Commission hear all these folks, what they have to say. Let them make their decision, and then move it up to us. And if these folks want to come back to testify before us again, after they testify at the Planning Commission, that would be the proper procedure to take. And I'm getting a head nod from our city attorney. I think there is a danger of statements happening here and anything that we might hear then, having that affect what the Planning Commission has to say or think or whatever. I personally am in the spot of going, let's let the Planning Commission bring it forward to us after they've finished their work. Are there thoughts?
Well, really appreciate everybody coming out here tonight, but I kind of have to agree with the mayor here because you are going to have a chance to testify at planning, and that's where you're going to have your thoughts heard. Really, tonight, it's going to be on the record, but it will be you'll get more distance if you do that at the planning commission. So we do appreciate you coming out, and you're welcome to stick around and for the rest of the meeting too. So.
And it was listed as a continuance on the agenda. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, I understand all that, and I've sat where these folks sat many a time, and I understand that there's a sequence of events that's supposed to happen. But, people drag themselves out on a windy night. I'm okay with hearing what they got to say.
And I'm not saying that I'm not okay with hearing what they have to say. I'm more concerned about the proper sequence of events as they move through the system. And I don't want to start getting, that confused. So, Commissioner Ide, I guess you've got the balancing vote here.
I would support the mayor's suggestion.
Okay. So, I would accept a motion. Commissioner Shaw?
Move to continue AN 16004-CZ16001
to
March 1st.
Oh, March 1st.
to a date certain, March 1st. Is there any further discussion? Oh, hey, Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
No, I need a second first.
I'm sorry. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
No.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
And I can just remind the audience the hearing will be Monday, February 13th here at 7 o'clock. And you can always submit written testimony to the Planning Division as well.
So that's the Planning Commission hearing.
Yep, Planning
Okay.
Commission hearing.
Thank you. All right, so move on to PC 17-012, tentative decision and request for continuation to March 1st for AN 16-003, annexation of the Oregon City Golf Club course. Ms. Turway.
Before we start with that, there are some legal disclosures we need to go through before we move into the substance of this application. Public hearing on a land use matter is scheduled tonight. A staff report has been prepared and has been made available to the public 7 days before tonight's hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to this annexation proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria along with written comments and input received through the public notification process. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart right there. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of these applications, and the matter is now before the City Commission for final consideration. Although the City Commission's review is of a Type 4 matter or typically on the record, given the lack of clear direction in the notice regarding the limitation in the City Commission's review, staff has recommended that the City Commission consider all new evidence submitted before the record is closed, whether it is closed tonight or at a later date. Anyone who wishes to speak in this appeal should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the city recorder. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and whether you reside or have a business within the city. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, you must identify and discuss those criteria and explain why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open, assuming that the Commission decides to open the public record. Any written materials mailed to city staff during the time period when the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the City Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, Any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the Commission's consideration. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be adjudged appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, Oregon Revised Statute 197796 requires us to announce the following. The failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now I have to ask the commissioners, do any commissioners have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare?
No.
And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about those
I do.
questions. Go ahead, Nancy.
Commissioner Hyde?
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if it's an ex parte contact or not, but during the break at the commission retreat on January 21st, Rose Holden asked me what I thought about the passage of the recent Senate Bill 1573, and I just replied with what I believe are the facts, that the bill took away a city's home rule authority. And there really wasn't any more time for further discussion because the meeting was reconvening, but that's all I have to report.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Commissioner O'Donnell will say that I have had no ex parte contacts of any kind.
Well, and the mayor has to say, as involved as I've been in this for the last almost 20 years, I think there is no way that I could report that I have never had an ex parte contact with Rose Holden or the rest of her folks. We've talked about these kinds of issues for many, many, many years. Most recently, I think I had a conversation with Rose in the last couple of weeks, discussing, at least what my goals are in, making the Beaver Grove concept plan happen. So if that makes me ineligible for this, then let me know.
The only contact I've had with Ms. Holden is at the OCBA meeting. We were maybe going to have a meeting about her project and stuff, and we declined to do that. So that's all it was.
I have a follow-up question for the mayor. Have you talked to Ms. Holden or anybody else about the annexation application that is before you for your consideration? Not the larger planning urbanization scheme for Beaver Creek, but anything specific regarding this particular annexation proposal and the land use criteria that would be relevant to its review?
Not recently. I think after the last time it went to a vote, the annexation went to a vote. I don't remember. You remember when that was, sir? Somebody?
I'll tell you in a second.
2008, 2009. I did debrief with Rose and actually met with a couple of folks from it's Scott Brune and his company were involved for a while, talking about the political aspects of somehow passing that annexation.
This application was filed in September.
Yeah. So other than that, no.
Does anyone in the public wish to question these commissioners about these disclosures?
Seeing none.
Have you visited the site? I'm assuming you all have you visited the site since September?
No.
Yes. I went to an OCBA retreat at the golf course 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Since September, no.
It wasn't, that wasn't the intent of, it's the golf club, they have meeting rooms, it wasn't about the annexation.
Okay, anyone else wish to question the commissioners? Seeing none. Now the commission needs to make a decision about whether to open the public record in terms of accepting new evidence. It is unusual, but I think it is appropriate. And I think you need to make a decision about that, and then from there we'll have a staff report.
So So the planning commission stuff is done. So it's now in front. So at this point, I have no problem opening the public record, unless somebody else does. Commissioner Ide.
Not I.
Okay. So with that, I will open the public hearing.
Open the record.
And the record. And we will hear from Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. The city received an application for AN 1603, which is about 117 acres located generally east of Beaver Creek Road, otherwise known as the Oregon City Golf Club. This application is just for an annexation. There is no zone change or development proposed with this application. The land associated with this annexation is within our urban growth boundary. It's also within our road concept plan. The concept plan provides a framework for properties and so that they have a avenue to develop in an orderly way to urbanizable densities. The application is currently before the Court of Appeals. So the Beaver Creek Road concept plan itself is not yet settled, though has been approved by the city. There are a lot of steps in development of properties, particularly within the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. On the screen, there's just a snapshot of a few of those steps. Each step can be quite a process in and of itself. So, as I previously stated, the urban growth boundary expansion has been completed, but that's really the only thing that's been completed as of today. At the moment, we're working on the adoption of the concept plan, the alternate mobility study, and this annexation application. In order to see development on site, there's still a lot of work to be done. For example, we'll have to create the zoning to implement the Beaver Creek Road concept plan and then go through a process for adoption for that. There's lots of incremental steps between here and there. And again, this is just for an annexation application. Some of these steps can happen in slightly different orders and can be combined, but you can rest assured that all the steps have to be completed before development can occur.
Can you back up just 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
So to make my point, I was on the city commission, and I want to say it was in
2002-ish.
1998, 99, something like that, when we brought this land into the urban growth boundary. So we're almost 20 years into this process, and all we've done is expand the urban growth boundary, and we haven't created a single one of those jobs that we talked about being able to create when we brought it into the urban growth boundary. So here we are almost 20 years later, and we haven't gotten even past the next step. Ms. Turway.
Thank you. So with this annexation application, there's a variety of approval criteria that you would want to utilize in order to make your decision. They're listed on the screen. At the bottom of the screen, there are some excerpts of our Oregon City Municipal Code. This case is slightly different than a lot of the other cases that come before you as far as the annexation. You have a balance of factors, not so much approval criteria. So with these factors, you can analyze how heavily you want to weigh each of the factors listed on the screen there. There is a question that came up at the Planning Commission regarding a recent Senate bill that was passed. Assistant City Attorney Carrie Richter is here to tell you a little bit more.
Let's see. So, Senate Bill 1573, I'm assuming you all know what it does. I'm kind of trying to gauge where to start here. So, Senate Bill 1573 purports to gazump city charters that... Gazump, that was an Ed Sullivan word. I figured you'd recognize it. Preempt.
I'm not that old.
Well, you were around in 1990.
Okay. Ed Sullivan's been dead quite a while by then. Yeah. Moving on.
So, 1573 purports to preempt city charter provision that provides for voter-approved annexations. And this is the second time that the City Commission has considered a annexation application after the adoption of 1573. And the City of Corvallis, joined by the City of Philomath and the Lake of Oregon cities, has challenged in circuit court whether or not the charter provision should prevail over 1573. And that question was raised before the Planning Commission as part of these proceedings, with the argument that the city's home rule authority requires voter-approved annexation and that the city ought to follow the charter rather than 1573. You have sort of three choices as it relates to this. The first one is reject this application for land use reasons. The approval criteria that Laura just mentioned. There's nothing to do with 1573. There are land use approval criteria in the city's code that have to do with utility adequacy and timeliness and those sorts of things, and that you can deny it for that, and we don't have to get to this 1573 question. If you decide that the land use criteria are satisfied, then we have to decide what we're going to do about 1573. And we can approve the application and follow 1573. So once you have made a tentative decision, I'm not sure whether it will happen tonight or another night, once you have made a tentative decision, the staff will come back with findings in support of that decision along with an ordinance. That ordinance will have instructions for staff about what to do next. And that's where this 1573 question comes in. We follow Senate Bill 1573, and you give instructions to staff to transmit the records to the Secretary of State, which will make the annexation effective. That's when the boundaries change. Option 3 is, I'm not sure what happened in option 3, but it's misnumbered, but option 3 would be approve the application and follow the charter. And that option is something along the lines of impose a condition of approval that annexation cannot be approved until affirmed by the electors, and instruct staff to seek court direction along the lines of what Corvallis did to resolve the conflict. You know, in my memo I explained that oral argument in the Corvallis case, there have been motions for summary judgment filed on both sides, and oral argument has happened. So a decision will be forthcoming in the next few weeks. The problem is it's not going to be binding in Clackamas County. It will not be binding until it goes to the Court of Appeals, which I would expect it will go to the Court of Appeals, but it could be a year, 18 months, 6 months at least.
Is it not also possible that once the Court of Appeals ruled, that could be appealed to the Supreme Court?
It is true. So anyway, it could be a long road. So option sort of 3A is either sort of sit and do nothing and await resolution of the Court of Appeals decision, or independently go ask a Clackamas County court to resolve the question. Or another option would be to instruct staff to take steps to place the matter on the ballot. What happened in Corvallis was right after 1573 passed, the City Council adopted a resolution that instructed staff to take no action with regard to 1573 and to treat all annexations subject to the charter. So I would, if you wanted to go the charter route, I would recommend that we probably do something along those lines so staff gets some clear instruction about what we're going to do with all. So this is not going to affect just the golf course, but all the subsequent annexations that are in the queue. I think that both paths are fraught with risk. Unfortunately, I have read the motions for summary judgment on both sides. And without getting too far into the weeds, what I think is telling is you look at the language of our charter and the Corvallis charter, and it says, unless mandated by law, the city shall include all territory encompassed by its boundaries as they now exist or hereinafter are modified by the voters. The unless mandated by law seems to have some meaning in my mind. The League of Oregon Cities and Corvallis argue that that language applies retrospectively and not prospectively. So it applies to old laws, but not new laws. I mean, I can talk more about sort of what the arguments are in Corvallis. The unfortunate reality is, either way we go, some party could challenge in court, arguing that either one, we can't send it to the voters, or we have to send it to the voters. In my mind, the fact that we've done one, and we did go through the 1573 process, and we've got that unless language, that to me weighs a little bit more in one direction, which would be following 1573. But I think we are in a defensible position either way.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
I have no questions because all the research I've done, you've just confirmed everything I've heard or read.
Well, good. I hope that's good.
Yep.
Well, if anybody reads everything, it's Commissioner O'Donnell. So
I made a few phone calls too, so my understanding was exactly how you depicted it for the audience. So proceed. Whatever.
So just a one comment. Given what's happened over the last couple of days, it would seem to me that when we talk about the term "words mean things," that Justice Antonin Scalia would have said that language means what that language means. So, who's next? Where are we at?
Before we move on to the applicant's presentation, I think it would be helpful, Laura, for you to give a quick summary of what evidence we've received and so what is in the record, if you wouldn't mind. I've got some items on the dais, and I'm not sure if those are related to 6A or 6B.
There is some items on the dais related to 6A.
Okay, so those will go to the Planning Commission.
So those were entered into the record for 6A, even though we didn't hear public testimony, just to clarify. There is some other evidence that was submitted to the Planning Division after the release of the agenda and the subsequent staff reports associated with that. There was a series of emails forwarded to the Commission that is available for the public as well, that provides a variety of information on documents from the comprehensive plan maps to utility information. It's larger city policy documents. The applicant can tell you a little bit more about them as well.
Okay.
All right, with that, we are recommending that you hear from the applicant and the public and consider all the testimony that's been provided and provide either some tentative direction if you feel like you're in that place to do that, and then continue the hearing until March 1st. We'll come back with revised findings in order to support that decision.
Okay. So, Rose, Tim, you guys have 15 minutes. If you would introduce yourself and your city of residence for the record, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Members of the Commission, for your record, my name is Tim Ramus, and I live in the city of Portland. For your record, I'm also here tonight on behalf of the property owners, the Herberger family. And the family has asked me to initially make sure that I thank the staff, the Planning Commission, and the many members of the public that has participated over the years in developing the plan for this property and getting it in a position where it's poised to be ready to come under the regulatory jurisdiction of the city. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear for the record. The family is also very pleased to be here on the cusp of moving this property ahead, of putting it in a position to become a part of the city. And very pleased, of course, to have a positive staff recommendation, positive recommendation from the Planning Commission after a very detailed hearing process. Although the annexation itself doesn't create a change in the use of land or a change in the impact on your transportation system. The family is feeling like the property is poised to move positively and become a part of the future of the city. 10 years of planning at least have been done on the property. Infrastructure analysis and planning is quite detailed at this point. LUBA has upheld the technical policy and policy decisions of the council. A developer is on board. The infrastructure challenges are known, and the developer is already preparing plans for how infrastructure improvement can be financed. The market is strong. The community is developed. The community clearly has development needs, and housing is very badly needed. So their view is that the timing is good, and we appreciate the cooperation of the city in moving this property ahead. Tonight, we're not here to repeat the staff report. The staff report is clear and detailed, and probably it would be more useful for me to offer a couple of comments on two broad subjects, two issues that have been raised by opponents, because I think they go directly to the framework for your decision on this matter. The first is the question of, when it comes to paying for infrastructure, is it somehow a bad idea to annex property? And the second is, should you wait until there is perfect information out there about infrastructure needs before you actually annex the property? I'll leave our other points for rebuttal if necessary. On the first question, by annexing, are you somehow giving away the ability to make development pay its own way? I think the answer to that clearly is no. This is an argument that's heard frequently in annexation cases. It's clearly a red herring. What annexation does is put into the city's hands the power to decide when land is developed and how it's developed. It puts into your hands the ability to condition the project and condition the land to provide the kind of infrastructure that's necessary. That is the fundamental thing that, from a regulatory standpoint, annexation accomplishes. The argument made by opponents fundamentally misses the point about how we regulate land in Oregon. It's a slow, incremental progression of small steps, and it's subject to citizen engagement at all steps along the way. Annexation is the first small step, but it doesn't create impact on land. From that point on, as your earlier slide indicated, there are many, many steps that have to happen. In this case, it includes the drafting and adoption of zoning regulations, applying those to the land, development of plans on how to solve infrastructure issues and pay for infrastructure, development of SDCs that would apply, development agreements that would apply. These requirements and these plans are then made binding by the city on the property before any building permit can be issued. That's how we do it, and that's why it's not foolish to annex property when you're trying to accomplish the building of a good city. The second issue frequently raised in this context, and has been raised in this case, is the argument that you don't have perfect information yet about every aspect of the development. You don't know exactly what project is going to be built, and therefore how can you possibly anticipate the impact? This raises the question of what exactly is the standard that you would apply to the decision. And as it turns out,
let the record show that Commissioner Mengelberg has arrived, please. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. As it turns out, in the case of Oregon City, back in 2008, you interpreted your code to establish what the standard was in an annexation when it comes to how much evidence has to be in the record in order to move the project along. And that decision was upheld at the Land Use Board of Appeals. And essentially, you ruled then that the code does not require that public facilities exist or that plans are in place. And second, that the city only has to consider the availability of services as one factor among many, as you've heard earlier in the staff presentation. So if you hear the argument that somehow there's a very, very high bar in terms of the data necessary, that's a repeat of an argument that was made in 2008 and which lost at LUBA. And I ask you to keep that in mind as you determine the standard and how you balance the factors in this case. I know that the staff report details the extensive study that's been done. The difference between this case and the one in 2008 is the actual studies on infrastructure have been completed for this project, and there's a great deal of data in the record. At that point, I'll stop and take any questions that you have, and if you don't have questions, we'll wait till rebuttal to testify further.
Commissioner O'Donnell, you got anything?
I guess my questions would be directed to the flow chart that you had shown before, Ms. Turway.
Boom. There it is.
The flow chart has a series of events that need to happen, and one of them is the adoption of a concept plan, adoption of alternative mobility targets. And my understanding is those are not yet in place, and that the applicant is essentially asking us to do a conditional approval that when they come into a place, then the process moves on. Is that correct?
What we're asking specifically is that you annex the property now so that the property is within your regulatory jurisdiction. At that point, before we could ever file a land use application, the kinds of things you're listing would have to get completed. So in effect, yes, bring it in, but it is automatically conditioned by your own rules to make sure that we do those things before any development takes place.
So I want to ask a question of Ms. Turway.
Please do.
So this flow chart is not cast in stone. I mean, it's not necessarily true that the adoption of the concept plan, the adoption of the alternate mobility targets, or the adoption of the zoning code and map designations have to come before the annexation.
Correct.
So we could do the annexation, but we still would have to do the other steps.
Yes.
Yes.
You will.
Okay.
That's why the process, it says at the bottom, processes may be combined and in an alternate order, but must be completed prior to development.
Oh, I don't read the small print.
Well, it's black on
But the
gray, so it
footnote-
may not have been easy to see.
The footnote is correct. These are not
Footnotes.
these are not required to be done in this sequence. You have to be inside the UGB, and you have to get annexed, and then we can undertake participating in all the rest.
Do you have anything else, sir?
No, I understand that. I just sit here and listen to everybody express a respect for sequences and when things happen, and people present it at the proper time. So I'm weighing all those things. I mean, there's multiple levels that this could be decided upon tonight. The simplest is this. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Commissioner Mengerberger, do you have any questions to the applicant?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Mengelberg just arrived, and I would like to ask her if she
go
has
ahead.
any ex parte contacts. I know this is out of order, but I need to ask for the record, have you had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias that you wish to disclose on the record? So any conversations, read any newspaper articles with regard to this application since the application was filed in September?
No.
Anyone wish to question? Commissioner Mengelberg.
Seeing none.
Sorry, move on.
That's all right. Commissioner Shaw, you have any questions?
I think number one is we really got to thank the Planning Commission for their work on this. I think there's probably 100 pages worth of this project here that at least I got to read over the weekend and stuff. And hats off to them and to staff for putting a nicely detailed project out here. So I think the number one thing is that by annexation, the city is able to get control of what's going to happen. We know that the growth of our city is going in that direction. That's the only place we can go. And the city really needs to control that growth for our citizens. So that's what I've, and then I know there was talk about development and housing and traffic and stuff like that, but we're not there yet. All we're talking about is annexation.
Can we, let's try to limit this to questions for the applicant.
Yeah.
We'll have a chance at the end of this to state our own feelings.
Okay.
Commissioner Ide, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
public comment. Yes?
That would be good.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we all know where it's at.
Okay.
Okay, so I got to get back to the agenda. On the floor. There's only one commenter?
Two. Bill Holden and Doug Nation.
Oh. So I have Bill Holden and former Mayor Neely.
I have a few more coming in.
Mary, you want to come up? No, you can both come up at the same time.
Just points of confusion. One, I thought we passed the concept plan. You were talking about the order of the flow chart.
Well, the concept plan isn't officially passed until it's survived all appeals.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I understand that. The other question I had was you have already acted in terms of the what is it,
1573.
1573 on one decision. Does that set a precedent, or can the commission do one thing for one annexation and do another thing for another annexation?
Well, let me answer that so that
I was looking at the lawyer. Actually.
I know you were, but I'm going to answer it anyway, and that is from my standpoint as mayor. Once you have done something once, then it sets a precedent. And if we were to change that, I would think that we would leave ourselves open to another kind of lawsuit if we were to change direction at this point. I will always err on the side of following state and federal law. And currently, state law is what it is. Any objection to what I said, Ms. Richter?
None.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's
Thank
all
you,
I
sir. Mr. Holden.
Hi, my name is Bill Holden. I live at 616 3rd Street.
Just city for the record is enough.
Okay. I live in the city. And I'd like to thank you guys for always doing such a good job to help make the city a great place to live. I'm speaking here on behalf of myself in regard to the annexation of the golf course property. And there's obviously a lot to say in 3 minutes, so I'm a little bit iffy. Anyway, in regard to the 1573, there are issues, of course, that make me concerned in that when the citizens speak about it and have concern for the annexation and the fact that the 1573 is in place, what we have, I have a newspaper article here that came out on January 25th that says here, some developers in the past have been eager to propose both low and high density development without concern for transportation, education, utilities, habitat, or other effects in the quasi-rural areas. And my point is that the family went way, way overboard in the amount of effort that they put in and money that they put into this that dealt with all of these issues, including environmental stewardship, green building, green infrastructure. All of those efforts were put in to make this thing able to come to pass. So we have this city, or the citizens on this side that are putting out these alternative facts. It's been dealt with. It's not been discussed and considered. Then back, as you guys discussed, in 2008, this whole process was where we are again today. And a lot of that has already been done. And yes, we need to have zoning and codes in place, but in the last 7 years, how far have we gotten? And I think that's been said once before. But really, how far have we gotten in the last 7 years? It seems like people haven't really picked up their pens that much to do the work. And I just find it frustrating to know that that family has put in so much time and so much effort with valor. And it's frustrating to me to see that might be not considered. They have gone through every possible loophole to try to do it right. Their intentions to make this a sustainable community that links not only residential and commercial use, but also the education continuum, which is all built into the thing. And very quickly, I testified back in 2003 when this was originally to be an industrial zone. And when I testified, I said, hey, you guys, wait. We can do something very interesting, something that can make Oregon City truly special. And if we're supposed to be the first city, then we shouldn't just rely on it having been the first city, but we need to do things first. And there's an opportunity here that is incredible. It is an incredible opportunity. And I just want to say, please, with all the effort that that family has done, 1573 was meant for this property.
Sir.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. William Gifford and Barbara Rankin.
Go first.
Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. A couple of things. The first is probably a nit, but it bothers me that even on the agenda, this is referred to as the annexation of the Oregon City Golf Course, when indeed there are 4 properties there. It's not just the golf course, and I wish that we could be more clear on that. There are 2 issues that, although they are distinctly related, I think that they really have to be looked at as separate issues, the 1573 versus the annexation. We can approve the annexation now, as has been discussed already, and if it is overturned, if 1573 is discovered later, well, that's another issue. That's a separate issue. But if it prevails, if our state law does prevail, then we're all ready to move. If we wait until we get a determination on 1573, then we have to start this all over. We are right now at a good position to go ahead, get this annexation done. And if it turns out that it has to be overridden by the collapse of 1573, well, that's another issue. But either way, I think it was mentioned, there's going to be an appeal. So it seems to me as though if we can get this annexation done, get the appeal process started, whoever wants to throw mud at it can get done. The sooner we get started on it, the sooner we'll be able to deal with it one way or the other. The last point, aside from property taxes, which I'm not going to mention, which would be great for the city, if no property can be annexed, then Metro should not consider that land as developable within the UGB. The housing and job shortages will continue to exacerbate. And it seems to me that Metro should have great concern about designating an area that is ready for development and it not be able to be developed. I certainly strongly encourage you to get this annexation going so we can see what the next step in this process is going to be.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Rankin?
Barbara Rankin, and I'm in the Park Place neighborhood, but I'm on the CIC, so I'm speaking on behalf of that.
We've not had a CIC meeting where there was an agreement to speak, for you to speak for the CIC. So I would
speak
just
then for myself.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
Resident of Oregon City, Barlow Crest neighborhood. And my concern is about the annexations that first of all, I think there are 34 cities total that have gone organized with the League of Oregon Cities, not just Corvallis. There's quite a few. I'm not against the progress or any of that, and I'm not speaking for that reason. I'm speaking because we do have a municipal code, and I think we should respect it. And go ahead and, if you can do the annexation and then the development. But I think people want to see what's going to happen, and then there'll be an agreement. I live in an annexed area. The property behind me was annexed. It wasn't a problem in the Park Place neighborhood. But now, all of a sudden, everybody, it's all over the place. Everything's wanting to be annexed. It's overwhelming. Just from a practical point of view, I know I'm not supposed to talk about traffic or any of that stuff, but it is. It's a reality. So thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Gerald Dietz and Dan Fowler.
I'll first, right?
Do I need to put my flak vest on, Gerald?
Better.
Shoot straight.
My name's Gerald Dietz. I'm not going to give my address because when I get done, I don't want any drive-by shootings. But I have a feeling the locks are going to be changed after tonight. Uh-oh. So I had a lot to say, but I'm going to make this quite simple. The people voted on this, not once, I believe twice. And it got beat big time. Wasn't a squeaker. So you say you're here for the people, but yet you're considering this? The people said no. You're here for them. I mean, I can go on and give you issues. I don't know the technicality of what she's talked about, what they talked about, but you're here for the people. And they said no. Now, I don't want to get into how the government's slowly taken away our right to vote. We got Trump, we got Junior, Bush, we got Canby. They keep taking away our right to vote. And we had that right. And all of a sudden the state, and I don't know if it's already passed, I don't know if Kate Brown signed it yet.
Oh yeah, it was signed.
Was it signed?
A month or so after it
okay.
passed.
They're taking away our right to vote again. And the city has told each and every one of you, I don't care what you think. And I do know this, because I'm the guy you never see here. I'm the guy that stands in the corner and listens. I know you're all friends with Rose, and she's a very, very nice person. But I do know this discussion has taken place. And if you said it didn't, it did.
I said I did.
No, you're off the hook. But it has. That's where the locks are going to be changed. But it did. So I'm saying is that you need to start respecting the voters. Not your opinion, but what the voters believe in. There's a lot of issues that happened since I was a young man that passed, and I didn't like them. But the people voted on it. And you have to understand, you have to respect these people in this city and not, this is, how many times it's been up? It has to stop. If Rose, a very nice lady, sell the golf course, but there's a lot of more property out there to annex, and, come on, stop it. And that's all I got to say. I actually had a lot more to say, but I think that would simplify it. And I think our locks changed. Take care of yourselves.
Full disclosure, Mr. Dietz and Commissioner Mengerberg are married. So
Well,
that should make for an interesting discussion later. Mr. Fowler.
Dan Fowler. I have a business here in Oregon City. I'm going to take a high-level view of annexations in that I believe that if we're going to have proper land use, that we need proper annexations. And when the urban growth boundary was set in place, it was done so to save our farm and forest land, and that the development would occur within that UGB. And along the way, voter annexations did get passed, and we dealt with that within our city. I believe the legislature looked at that issue long and hard, and in their wisdom as elected leaders, made a very tough decision to look at proper land use planning and agree that it was not necessary for the vote. That was not done easy. That was not done without a lot of thought and angst, I'm sure. But I believe in the long run, if we're going to truly have proper planning, the very first step in that process is the setting of the urban growth boundary, and the second step could be, because those can be out of order, could be the annexation of that property. That's where the planning for the development then occurs. The public is not let out of that process, and I believe that's the best way to have our city develop. So I would encourage you to choose option 2 tonight and support the annexation. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay. then I will close the public hearing.
Nope, nope.
Applicant rebuttal.
What?
Applicant
Oh.
rebuttal.
Any rebuttal, Mr. Amos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, for your record, Tim Ramus on behalf of the Herberger family. I'll just mention with respect to the statute that you did make a decision that's been referenced earlier to annex property consistent with the statute. The file number is PC 16-084, and in our view, you established a precedent. Even if you didn't, the idea that you would treat one property owner one way and a different property owner another is certainly not a portrait in fairness. So we would ask that you follow the statute in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask the applicant a question?
Sure.
You had made a request, or we have information in the record about the status of the acknowledgement and a request to modify the application with regard to the effectiveness date, putting aside the 1573. What is your current request with regard to that, assuming that we are going to make a tentative decision and come back with findings tonight?
I would ask that the Commission approve the application and direct staff to return with make a tentative decision tonight and ask the staff to come back with findings, and we're happy to work with the staff on that to craft whatever the appropriate condition would be. In our view, I think at this point we would see the property as being permitted to be approved immediately, but we're happy to look at the evidence with you that's in the record to determine that. Thank you.
Okay, so now
I think you can close the public hearing, close the record.
So I'll close the public hearing, I'll close the record, and we will have a discussion of the merits at this point.
And I think the goal is to reach a tentative decision with an idea, with instruction to staff about things that you think are important for us to include in the findings, and we will come back with findings and an ordinance at the meeting on March 1st.
Okay. So generally speaking, I let my commissioners start the conversation and I wind up. But in this case, since I have a special responsibility, I thought I would start the conversation. So the reason we have owner annexations in Oregon City is because as a stupid young man in his early 30s, I was sent a book by a guy named Evan Fodor out of Eugene, who was a big property, anti-growth guy. I read the manifesto, and as young men sometimes do, fell in love with the theory. So I brought that forward. I can't recall whether we did it as an issue petition or whether we did it at the city commission level. It probably says somewhere in the charter. Either way, I'm the guy that started this mess in the first place. And I have said for several years now in many public meetings that it was a bad thing for me to do. It was a mistake. Given the constructs of Senate Bill 100 and Oregon's land use planning system, it doesn't make sense to have these chunks of land that are technically available for development but are practically unavailable for development, included in the region's urban growth boundary, or what they're calling the inventory of available land. Because in reality, none of the land east of Beaver Creek Road is really in reality available. So not only did I make that mistake back then, 20-some years ago, but I endeavored to fix that mistake by working with folks in the legislature over the last 2 years to get that fixed. So And I apologize to Mr. Dietz, but at the same time, I brought it in. I think I should have at least the ability to admit a mistake and try to get rid of it. Mr. Maybe made and I normally don't watch Planning Commission meetings because I don't want to have, to have to mention that I watched them and have all that happen. But since we knew this was going to come to the City Commission anyway, it didn't really make any difference as far as an ex parte contact or hearing information
Watching
beforehand.
the proceedings would not be an ex parte contact.
Okay. So
The proceedings are part of the record.
one of the comments that the Planning Commissioner maybe made is that that land is sitting out there, and its property taxes are going to Clackamas County, or a version of, a piece of those property taxes are going to Clackamas County. Annexing this property in, all it does is deliver those property taxes, that portion of the property tax, to the city rather than the county. We still have all of the authority to do all of the planning things that we would normally do, to shoot down plans that don't do the things that we want to do, whether it's environmentally, transportation, or jobs, or whatever the case may be. And I don't think there's anybody who can accuse me of disrespecting voters. I've worked, I don't know, probably the last 25 or 28 years working in the public domain as a volunteer. I've never once taken a paycheck from any jurisdiction I worked with, the school board, the county, the city. So when I say respecting voters, I get the fact that people get unhappy when something like this happens at the state level. But at the same time, I'm just going to reiterate, I started the mess. I'm trying to clean it up. I fully support 1573. I think it is totally in line with our state land use planning system the way it is. Not that I agree with all of our state land use planning system either, but once again, I remain committed to following state and federal law until someone tells me that I can't. And as far as I know, there is nobody that can tell me that I can't follow state or federal law. Who's next?
I am.
Commissioner Ide.
Okay. So there's several things. First of all, I really strongly believe that every step of the future development process must, and I know we're not talking about a future development process, we're talking about the annexation tonight, but just in my own mind, to justify more or less the annexation, every step of any future development must be thoroughly analyzed by staff, by the Planning Commission, the City Commission, and citizen input. And all of that includes things like water and sewer improvement projects. And the counties even the Clackamas County has already consented to the annexation of this area, or of the Beaver Creek right-of-way. The transportation system plan identifies many road improvements, stormwater development, police and EMS services are shown to be adequate. I mean, I could go on and on. It was all in the staff report. But even more than that, I just a few weeks ago, I took an oath to uphold the laws of our state and our city and so forth. And the Senate Bill 1573 right now is our law. And even though if I had the opportunity down the road to try to bring it back as being a home rule decision, that's to be determined. But it's the law right now, and until it's overturned or revised, I believe that this annexation can come to the City Commission for approval, and that's kind of where I'm at this point. I guess you have to start somewhere with such a large project, and annexation looks to be the first step. And one last comment, Doug Neely stole my thunder. Just a reminder to everyone that we already approved an annexation last September. I believe it was on Columbine Court or something like that. And I don't recall any opposition to the Senate bill at that time. And so I think that the precedent stands here as well.
Thank you, Commissioner, and feel free to chime in if you need to.
I will.
All right, Commissioner O'Donnell.
So I would contribute to the discussion at two levels tonight. On the simplest level, the question before the commission is, can you approve the annexation moving forward on the basis of information before you? And when I look at the flow chart, knowing that I've been told it doesn't have to be in sequence, I see that, we have two requirements that will be unfulfilled. One, and I'm told that they can be fulfilled at a later date. But the one that troubles me, quite honestly, is the transportation safety report, or the transportation report that's undone. Because when you read the state report, you see that the 213 Beaver Creek intersection ranks in the top 5% worst intersections in the state. And you see that there's been 11% growth in volume in that intersection over the past 5 years. And you see that it exceeds the critical crash rating. And I think those are considerations where I'd like to see those documents in place. I'm not asking for that high level of proof. I don't want everything in place. But I'd like to see those two documents in place. And the other objection I raise is the commission was furnished with some document late in the day today that I have not had the chance to review. And I would like to review that because I don't know what its significance is. So for me, I would postpone this until I had a chance to review everything. Now that's at the simplest level. Now I want to have a discussion on the more complex level of Senate Bill 1573, which is in direct conflict with our own city charter. Because I stood there a month ago and I swore to uphold all these laws, and now we have two laws in direct conflict with each other. So I can't use the language, but you are if you do and you are if you don't. Right?
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. So, what the League of Oregon Cities is before the court on is not just annexation. It's on the right of home rule. And home rule in its simplest definition is the right for you in the area in your home where you live to make decisions that affect your life. Not made by others, removed from your area, by you. So, in 1925, if you look up the history of home rule, the statement was that we wanted to guarantee cities in Oregon full control over their own affairs and restricting legislative interference with home rule. So here sits a commission wanting to honor the wishes of its people in direct conflict with the state law, which is currently being challenged. I want you to know that that's recognized by everybody up here, and our decisions, personal feelings, I have no questions about who elected me. It was the citizens of Oregon City. It wasn't the citizens of the state of Oregon. So I don't want to deal with these things piecemeal. I don't want every annexation to come up to be faced with this conundrum. And the question is, if in fact we're going to abide by 1573, do we need to put something before the voters to say, hey, we're done with voter approval? Do we need to just wash it from the books, or do we wait for decisions? I'm not sure how that will occur.
Well, I think the first thing we wait to see what happens in the appeals process.
And again, let me say that the issue might be based on annexation, but that's not the issue. The issue is your right to home rule. And again, as the lawyer pointed out, that's specific to the parties involved, and we'd have to take our own actions after the fact. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Until the Court of Appeals rules.
Yeah.
It would not be controlling here. Might
So-
be informative, but it wouldn't be controlling.
Understood. That's how I read it too. So I sit here tonight and I listen to everybody, spouting off respect for process and sequences, and yet we're being asked to do things out of sequence, and especially with some things I view as critical to going forward. And I recognize that all we're being asked to address is the annexation. So I don't need to make a decision tonight on the basis of Senate Bill 1573 and home rule. The decision can be made at a simplified level, but I sure would encourage additional discussion on those items at a future point.
Commissioner Shaw?
Well, I apologize for speaking out of turn there a little bit
okay.
previously, but the what's before us tonight is a annexation, and we've had one before us before that's going to set the precedent here. So I do value the citizens of our community and their right to vote here. But there are times where that we're kind of up here to make the big decisions, as is our planning commission. But because we have 100 pages of information here that the public doesn't have, or they can't have access to it if they want to read it and stuff. But so we hopefully are making a very educated decision here on your behalf. Things change, and and remember, it's just an annexation. I think all these other issues, the intersections and things like that, are going to be dealt with when a plan or whatever ever happens from henceforward. So this is a tough one for me, especially just because of how much I do value the right to vote. But we have to look at the growth of our city here, and we look at this in the big picture and just not this. This is part of that, this annexation. And that's where I hope that the citizens can value what we're doing up here. So, thank you.
Commissioner Megenberg, you got anything?
I feel a bit of a disadvantage because I came late, and my apologies to everybody for that. I had to be at work.
I told him.
Okay. I, like Commissioner O'Donnell, would like a little bit more time. There's a lot of information that was presented, a lot of information that was here at my desk that I haven't had a chance to look at. I want to make a wise decision. I want to weigh everything. The Senate bill that we're dealing with is the law, and that's what we have to deal with. I just need to feel a little bit more comfortable that the application met all the criteria, and I don't feel like I've evaluated everything thoroughly enough to be able to do that. I do definitely respect the land use process. The Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan went through a lot of public meetings and hearings, and it is a great blueprint for how that area can develop. The concept is that people can work, they can live, they can shop. In theory, they might not even need to leave the area and do everything they need to do. So, and when we have larger parcels available, the airport and this one, you can really be thoughtful and well coordinated in how a larger area develops and provide infrastructure. It makes more sense to provide the infrastructure when you're having a larger development happening. So in concept, I can support it. I just don't feel comfortable voting tonight.
Okay. So I'll go last. The one thing that we're doing, that it says here tonight is a tentative approval, because we need to give staff the opportunity to go back and write findings and do that sort of thing. That does not necessarily mean that we couldn't reject this at the March 1st meeting. But I'd like to have the opportunity for staff to have direction to be able to go back and write those findings and the other things that we need to have for March 1st. That gives everybody at least almost a month to review whatever documents that we all need to review, because you're right, there was some stuff from the applicant late in the day. And I think there was some stuff from, was it just the applicant? Okay, so there was at least stuff from the applicant late in the day today that I haven't had a chance to review either. But we'll have a month to do that process. I think in the interest of continuing to move this, very speedy project along, that I would look for a motion to approve the tentative approval of the decision and request for to continue this to a date certain of March 1st. Somebody willing to make that motion?
With instructions.
I'll make the motion.
All right.
with instructions to staff to adopt findings in favor of approval.
You're okay with that, Commissioner Ide?
Can you repeat that, please?
Into the mic.
Tentative decision to approve the annexation request with instructions to staff to return on March 1st with findings for the Commission's consideration along with an ordinance.
Yes, I move as presented.
Question. Would that then be on the consent agenda, or would it be a public hearing?
No, this is going to, it's a continuation, so it's going to still be a public hearing.
It would be a public hearing, but no testimony would be taken. It would be for deliberation only. The public record is closed, so no further testimony would be taken.
Is there some question, concern?
The record contains, the record has, we have received materials into the record that you accepted today.
Right.
And the issue is whether or not folks have had an opportunity to review that evidence.
Right.
And comment on it. And
So if I've closed the public record, I still have the capability of saying that we're going to hold the record open through the end of the next hearing, right?
You do. We can hold the
Do
record
I have
open.
that authority, or does it have to come from the Commission?
It has to come from the Commission.
Okay. So as part of, Nancy, would you be willing to amend your motion to say that we're going to leave the record open until the March 1st hearing?
Well, can I?
Yes.
I have a
Really?
If I could, Mayor Holliday, too.
1 second.
Okay.
I have a better suggestion.
Okay.
That I think might move this forward a little bit more quickly, but still resolve the concern. We could leave the record open for 7 days until 5 p.m. 1 week from tonight for folks to submit a response, if they wish to, in writing. At which point the record would close. Sometime after that, we'll come up with a schedule. We could do 7 days, folks can submit additional testimony. We could do 7 days after that, folks can respond. And then at that point, the public record will close automatically. That way, we won't have new evidence coming in on the 1st of March. We will give our staff an opportunity to review that. You will have an opportunity to review it. The statute does provide for the applicant to have 7 days after the record is closed to submit final written argument. I don't know if the applicant wishes to exercise that right, but what we could do is we could do a 7-day period for additional written evidence. If folks want to respond to the new evidence that came in today, we could allow people 7 days to respond to the evidence that comes in the first 7 days, and then the applicant to decide whether they want to exercise this right of final written argument. If we do that, I think we're pretty close to March 1st, which may jeopardize staff's ability to draft findings, depending on what kind of volume we get in that first 7 days. But
That's correct. So if you did 7 days, it would be February 8th for additional testimony, and then another 7 days would be February 15th for a chance to respond to that additional testimony. If the applicant wanted another 7 days to respond to everything, that would be February 22nd, which is the date that we send out the commission packet. So it's a little too close. So you could continue it to after March 1st. If you did the 777 scenario. The next available date would be March 15th.
Mr. Manager, suggestions?
I would be concerned that you've taken evidence into the record that was received that we received 5 hours before the beginning of this hearing.
Agreed.
Of which you potentially are accepting in as evidence to which folks have not had a chance, both you, some of you potentially, as well as the interested parties, to review and comment on that. I would prefer to remedy that rather than just close the record without providing sufficient opportunity for folks to participate in the process.
Sure.
So you're thinking March 15th then?
I have a question.
Commissioner Ide.
Would for the city manager, does that give staff enough time to prepare the staff report for the March 1st meeting?
Not if you have the record open. No.
If we kept the record open for 7 days and proceeded through the month as Laura Turway described, is that enough time for the March 1st meeting, or would it have to go to the March 15th?
She's saying no, it's not enough time, and we would at minimum have to go to March 15th, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'm comfortable with March 15th.
I'm comfortable with March 15th, the record remaining open, and I don't know if there needs to be a recommendation on it, just the record remains open for review.
We have to set deadlines for when the record will close, because we have to be very clear about when that deadline is for the public record for folks who may be here in the audience and may be watching on TV.
We could provide that to you.
That actually wasn't my question. I've got no problem with the timeline. I believe it originally was proposed as a recommendation for approval.
So hold on. Let's. We have a technicality on the table
Okay,
here. That
please
is
do.
there's a motion but not a second. So we're discussing a motion that really isn't on the table yet.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell.
What is the motion? Please restate the motion for the record.
Ms. Richter, and you might as well modify it with the March 15th date.
The motion is to continue the hearing, reopen the record to a date certain of February 8th.
15. March 15th.
No, not if we're going to do this 777 thing.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I apologize.
Okay. The motion is to continue the proceeding until a date certain of March 15th, but to reopen the record to allow additional testimony until that must be filed and emailed to Laura Turway on or before 3:30 p.m. February 8th. Has to be received by that time. All responsive testimony to the material submitted before February 8th must be submitted to Laura Turway and received by Laura Turway by February 15th at 3:30 p.m. At that point, the record will be closed. The record will close at 3 p.m. on February 15th.
3:30.
3:30. Sorry, 3:30 p.m. on February 15th. The applicants will be allowed a 7-day period until February 22nd at 3:30 p.m. to submit final written argument. We will return on March 15th with some draft findings consistent with what we believe is where you're headed with this, but with the understanding that you can change your mind, and a draft ordinance.
Nancy made a motion to continue to...
March 15th.
She made an original motion?
Let's do
I
this.
think Commissioner Ide made a motion.
Let me
March 1st.
let me readjust this. So, Commissioner Ide, would you care to withdraw your original motion?
I thought we were making a tentative decision.
Right. So it's evolved a little bit. So in order to get this right without it being too complicated, it's the mayor's request that you withdraw your motion and let Ms. Richter rephrase this.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
Mr. Shaw?
I'll withdraw my second.
There we go. Okay, so let's start over one more time so
Sorry.
everybody's clear.
So I think that the motion would be a request for a continuance, a motion for a continuance to March 15th. In the meantime, you're going to reopen the record.
And all the other stuff you said in between. Okay. So, who wants to make that motion?
I will say so moved.
Commissioner Ide, you got a second for me?
Second.
Okay. So now, is there any further discussion from the commission? All right. So, let's call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye.
So just for everyone's benefit, February 15th at 3:30 p.m. the record will close. All written testimony has to be received by Ms. Turway before that deadline. We are going to return on March 15th with a tentative set of findings and ordinance for your consideration. There will not be any more testimony taken on March 15th. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to step out for a minute. Can you take over for these two items for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. Want to continue on, Katie?
Yeah. That or you can take a recess. It's up to you.
You want to recess?
Let's take a
We'll
recess.
recess 5 minutes, please.
Okay, we will come back to order. And moving on to 17-093, first reading of ordinance 17-1002, amending Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 3.06, tax on recreational marijuana sales. Mr. Parno.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday and City Commissioners. Before you is Ordinance 17-1, which would amend City Code related to the collection of taxes on marijuana sales. As you know, in November, the voters imposed the tax, and they also authorized the city to enter into an agreement with the state's Department of Revenue to collect the tax on behalf of the city for administrative efficiencies. Since that time, the state has worked with the League of Oregon Cities to clarify how the code should read to align the rules associated with applying penalties and interest for delinquent payments. And so this ordinance would amend code to align with the state's rules and allow them to exercise the collection of the tax for us. With that, I'm happy to entertain.
So the state's going to collect the cash and then send us a check?
Correct.
Okay. Just clarifying that currently everything they do has to be done in cash.
All right.
So the check is in the mail.
Not yet. We haven't collected the cash yet.
Nor have we opened a dispensary.
Technically, they are just now a store. Questions? Comments?
None.
I have one question.
Commissioner Ide.
Yeah, do we have to pay the Department of Revenue any kind of fee for, like, their collection and disbursement services?
Yes, Mayor Holliday, Commissioner Ide, there is a 4% reduction of the fee for the state, and that's up front, and there's a formula that the state uses to calculate the fee, which will be trued up annually and then adjusted out of the 4%. And I did review that. It covers the costs of their system and their direct costs for collection, and it's allocated across all of the cities that work with the state. So it seems like a fair fee to me.
Anybody else?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Then I'd entertain a motion for the first reading.
Move to approve the first reading of 17-097, ordinance number 17-1002, amending Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 3.06, tax on recreational marijuana sales.
Seconded.
Moved by Commissioner Mengelberg, seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there any further discussion? Carrie Richter, would you please read the ordinance?
I thought you were
Got on, didn't you?
ready to jump in. Ordinance number 17-1002, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City amending the Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 3.06, marijuana and marijuana-infused products tax.
Is that it?
That's it.
Call a roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Yay. Down to 17-098, second reading of ordinance 17-1001, removing Lynn Avenue from the 2016 Sewer Public Facility Strategy. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So, yes, this is a second reading of ordinance 17-1001. And really, this is, if you remember, in 2014, the city discovered that it had several areas that were limited in capacity. There was actually 7 areas adopted. This ordinance would essentially acknowledge that all but one area is remaining. So all 6 areas now would be lifted from our sewer moratorium list. And the one area that's remaining is Hazelwood, and so we're moving forward with the design on that. But this really just lifts the Lynn Avenue North and Lynn Avenue South areas from the moratorium. So we're asking for your adoption of ordinance number 17-1001.
Your motion?
Move to approve ordinance number 17-1001.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Mengelberg. Is any further discussion? Ms. Richter?
Ordinance number 17-1001, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City removing Lynn Avenue from the 2016 Public Facility Strategy.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Ide.
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg.
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. Okay. Does anybody want to pull anything off the consent agenda?
Nope.
Not me.
Nope.
Okay. Motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda, please.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Mengelberg. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Ide.
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg.
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. On to communications. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. I'll start with an update from Mr. Lewis, John Lewis, on the
Water quality follow-up question from our last meeting.
Thank you, Tony. So there was a question, Mayor, that you raised about waterborne illness in Oregon City, and that was based on a conversation we had about an award that we'd gotten for, or not award, but a certification that we gotten during our health inspection. And we asked South Fork Water Board if they could help us out a little bit with that research. We also asked our library to check some of their records to make sure there wasn't something else out there. And really, since the South Fork Water Board's been in place, there's not ever been anything. It sounded like from their recollection, there was a typhoid outbreak in 1912, and at that time we were getting drinking water from the Willamette River, which essentially was the reason why we got the South Fork Water Board and the water treatment plant with the intake off the Clackamas. So we've got a clean bill of health, and hope to always have a clean bill of health with water.
So just to put that in perspective, South Fork Water Board last year celebrated its was it 2015? I think it was 2015. It celebrated its 100th birthday. So we're well over 100 years and with clean water and no outbreaks of anything.
Right.
Anything else?
1915. One thing that I didn't know, but I knew that the Mountain Line was the service, but that was the time that was put in service, was 1915, and that's how South Fork got its water originally.
Right. So South Fork has the oldest perfected water rights on the Clackamas River of any other entity out there, and most people don't know, but this is an interesting aside. If you drive up the highway up there that runs along the North Fork of the Clackamas River, you can look over and see from time to time stretches of what looks like a log flume. In actuality, that was the open wooden culvert that we brought water down from the mountain from the upper Clackamas River to the South Fork plant back in the early days. Later on, we buried a pipe, and then eventually we abandoned that when we built the first new intake that we have since abandoned when we built the new intake about 20 years ago. So little bit of South Fork history.
An update from Ms. Turway on the Beaver Creek Road 213 Luba appeal.
Thank you very much. For the Beaver Creek Road concept plan, we had received a decision from you for approval. That went to the Land Use Board of Approves, Appeals. Thank you. I'm so sorry. And that went to the Court of Appeals, where we're waiting for a decision now. We had another decision that we were waiting for from Luba, which was regarding the zone change at Beaver Creek in 213. We did receive a remand from Luba regarding one very specific issue. All in all, Luba had a very long, exhaustive opinion, and in that opinion, it affirmed the city's larger concerns that were brought up within the scope. The one item that we were remanded on was clarification of if it mattered, if you do a zone change from residential to commercial, clarifying that the city's environmental protections apply equally. So we have a natural resource overlay district which protects streams and wetlands through the use of a vegetated corridor. So it's stream, wetland, lush native vegetation that we call vegetated corridor, then development. And in the code, it doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential, that width of that vegetated corridor is still the same. So they were looking in that zone change application for more clarification of how that environmental overlay applies to the zone, which is in the scope of the entire appeal really, really good. So there was a remand. We'll have to go through a process. It'll go back before Planning Commission and come back before the City Commission to affirm, and then hopefully we're one step closer.
Okay.
Can I
Questions?
add just a couple of points?
Ms. Richter?
Luba's opinion is 70 pages. There were 10 assignments of error, and Luba remanded on 1. You may remember there was a bias challenge pursued against 3 or 4 of the commissioners, and Luba found that was not well taken. As Laura summarized, there is this Goal 5 issue, and it will be resolved through some additional findings, and the applicant is going to put together some additional evidence, sort of comparing the environmental impacts from commercial development on a riparian corridor versus residential. So that's where we are going, but at this point, this decision can be appealed to the Oregon Court of Appeals. The deadline to appeal it is February 15th. So we cannot do anything until that February 15th deadline passes, at which point then we will be working with the applicant to move it forward on the remand.
And do you foresee any possibility that we wouldn't be able to answer Luba's concerns on this Goal 5 issue?
No.
Okay. Questions? Anybody else? All right. Mr. Shaw, do you have something?
No, I think, are you done?
I guess got a couple more real quick. Just an opportunity. The Clackamas County Disaster Management in the City of West Lynn are putting on an emergency management for elected and appointed officials training on February 27th from 6:30 to 8:30 at the West Lynn Police Station. It'll discuss the incident management process, elected appointed officials' role, and tips and tools for elected appointed officials. If that's something you're interested in, please let myself or Ms. Riggs know, and we can help get you RSVP'd for that. Also, hopefully all of you have seen Representative Schrader. Town Hall meeting is Friday, February 10th, 8:30 a.m. To 10 a.m. at the West Lynn City Hall. Once again, hopefully you've received that email. If not, please let us know and we can assist with that. Last but not least, I'd like to...
You want to mention Senator Wyden's meeting too?
Yes. Senator Wyden's is this Friday. It got moved. I think it's
2 p.m.
2 p.m.
at Camp Withicum.
Yes. Last but not least, happy to present to you the comprehensive annual financial report for Oregon City and the financial report for the Oregon City Urban Renewal Agency for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2016. And there's letters from the audit firm to the commission that are required per the firm's auditing standards. Essentially, the auditors issued an unmodified or clean opinion relating to the financial statements. So congratulations to Mr. Parno and his team and the excellent work that they do on our financial accounting, passing these audits, coming back clean, and really cleaning up how we do a lot of the work that we do in the city here and track that and account for it. So please take whatever time you need, reading through that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. And that concludes my updates for tonight.
Mr. Shaw?
Well, thank you, Mr. Parno, for your great work here. So we gave us a little bedside reading this evening here. So
I think I have another room, but
anyway, so I attended Terry Gant's memorial service, and Chief's band did a great job on the eulogy. Enough so that I got home and told my wife that Jim Band will be doing my eulogy, so he's taking notes as we speak over there, I think.
That freaks me out, you say.
Yeah, I know. You're going to be on the circuit. The guy did a great job. So, and also we did our retreat here last weekend, and that was great. Really appreciate the staff and directors and all the work you guys put into that and your continuing work you're doing. Went to the OCBA luncheon the other day where Mr. Conkle did a great presentation on development in Oregon City. Had our usual South Fork Water Board meeting, and let's see what else. Oh, the county dinner was at Bob's Red Mill last Thursday, so we got to hear from some of our local representatives there. And lastly, went to the chamber this morning, so that's it.
Commissioner Mayberg?
See, I went to the Clackamas County dinner, the retreat, and the OCBA meeting as well. All of them were excellent. Also attended the Brownfields Task Force, the very first kickoff meeting. When was that? Last Thursday, I think. That'll be a 3-year effort, so we're off to a good start. And I think that's it for now.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes, I also attended the OCBA meeting, and kudos to Tony Conkle for representing the city really well at that. Also attended the, out of curiosity more than anything, the Board of County Commissioners interview meeting last week. The interviews for the new commissioner, and it's down to 3 at this point. Also, I participated in the Clackamas County homeless count, which is a count of homeless people in the county. The count is required to bring federal funds to the county for various homeless services. And let's see. One other thing, a big shout out to Ray Gordon and her band, the Backseat Drivers. They are our local talent, and they left a couple days ago for Memphis, Tennessee, where they're competing this week in the International Blues Challenge. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to Ray and hope that they bring the prize back to Oregon City. There's almost 300 bands competing there, so go Ray. And as a side note, my husband and daughter are there too, so woohoo! And thanks for accommodating me tonight here while I'm still trying to recover from all this craziness. So that's all I have.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, nothing stellar like my compatriots, but I did, in an attempt to try to understand some of the issues that have and will come before this board, I actually went and walked Waterboard Park from the Armory to Promontory Point, and that place is a treasure. And I have high hopes for its future. And I actually did also go over to Buena Vista House for reference, and I guess it's Atkinson Park, the surrounding park.
Yes.
And I'm all for some community involvement. I mean, I'd get over there and do a rake and clean the place up. And we've got these treasures that you can live here 20 years and not even realize it until you get out and do it. So I did it partially for my own enjoyment and partially for better understanding when these issues come before us.
Okay. So obviously I was at the retreat along with everybody else, and once again, staff did a great job putting that event on. We managed to get through a ton of material in a timely fashion, and I think we actually ended on time. So I think that's a good thing. I also attended the 10-year anniversary of Lewis and Clark Bank and their opening of their new facility down on Agnes. It is still Agnes, right?
Sure what they're, but it is, yes, it is Agnes Avenue.
I had every intention of going to the Clackamas Cities dinner, yet when I came outside, my car would not start. So Mr. Lewis kindly drove me home, and I had it towed away the next day, and turned out the battery was completely out of water. How a sealed battery runs out of water, I'm not quite sure, but that's the way it happened. So I will be attending C4 tomorrow night, assuming we don't have weather. Well, we don't have bad weather. We always have some weather, apparently. And that'll be an opportunity for us to see whether the county commission was being honest and above board with us as far as changing the way they work with cities. I think that'll be a great opportunity for us to see whether that communication and cooperation style is going to change. So I look forward and hold high hopes that will be the case. Lastly, I have a list of commission appointments for 2017. We still have not made an appointment to the Metropolitan Advisory Committee. I'll continue to talk with my fellow commissioners on that. South Fork Water Board, I appointed myself and Commissioner Brian Shaw and Commissioner Frank O'Donnell. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, myself, and alternate as Commissioner Mengelberg, and Commissioner Mengelberg will also be doing the C4 subcommittee. The Regional Wastewater Advisory Committee is being left vacant until we hear whether it's actually going to come back and in what form it's going to come back. So we don't really know the answer to that question yet. Downtown Oregon City Association Board, Commissioner Nancy Ide. Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, Mr. Underwood, our Economic Development Director, is going to represent as a primary and an alternate as Commissioner Ide. Willamette Falls Legacy Project Liaison, myself and Commissioner Mengelberg. Clackamas Heritage Partners, Commissioner Ide. Citizen Involvement Committee Commission Liaison, Commissioner Shaw. Brownfield Grant Committee, Commissioner Mengelberg. The Oregon City Alternative Mobility Targets Community Advisory Group. Sounds like another regional thing. Commissioner Mengelberg. And appointment of Ken Hall to the Library Board for a 4-year term, which will end on December 31st, 2020. And with that, I think I'm done. So does anybody else have anything else for the good of the order? Then we're adjourned.